The idea behind the American colonization project was a mixed one. You had people like Robert Finley, who you mentioned was a reverend, who believed, who's a northerner, liberal, open-minded man, believed that African Americans in the United States were getting a raw deal, not being served very well. He kind of came up with this idea that there was no way that black people would be able to get a fair deal in America, and that the best option for them was to go back to a land that they could call their own, that they could govern over themselves. So he was one side of the equation. People like him, Northern evangelicals, Christians mostly, who felt that this was a noble cause. On the other side, you had people like Thomas Jefferson, who these were sort of progressive-minded planters. They owned slaves, but many of them felt that slavery was a doomed institution, that it wasn't going to last. It didn't make economic sense. It just wasn't fated to survive in the modern world. But he also believed that, again, African Americans could not live among whites, that the two races were so very different that they had to be separated. At one point he had said that, when the Romans liberated their slaves, it was one thing, the ancient Romans, because they were of the same race. But he said, we have a greater problem. We can't integrate these two races. Then there was also, among planters like him, many of them wanted to liberate their slaves. Many of them were influenced by the ideals of the American Revolution. All men are created equal. Now this was a small minority of progressive-minded slave owners. Most slave owners had no intention of releasing their slaves. This was the natural order of things. This is where their money was being made. They weren't going to release them. But there was a small group of progressive slave owners, particularly in the Chesapeake region of Virginia and Maryland, who felt that, yes, we need to free our slaves at some point. But the racist assumptions of the day was that they couldn't stay here. In fact, many southern states passed laws that said, if you free your slaves, they got to leave. They got to get out of here. We don't want this growing free black community. And in fact, the free blacks were the fastest growing community in the early republic. Their population was growing very rapidly, and it worried people for racist reasons and also for practical reasons. And so the idea grew that we needed to get them out of here. And so a bunch of these slave owners, these progressive-minded slave owners, along with these northern evangelical liberals like Robert Finley, met in Washington, D.C. in 1816, in December. And they created the American Colonization Society. And the thing about the American Colonization Society was this was not a fringe group. This was the movers and shakers of Washington, D.C. These were the power brokers. Some of those powerful men in the land were there because the abolitionists who get we hear their heroic story of fighting slavery, they were a small radical fringe group that was not widely appreciated or accepted in Washington, D.C. This was the mainstream consensus. This was the conventional wisdom. If we're going to free the slaves, we've got to get them out of America. They don't have a right to be here. And so the American Colonization Society was founded on that principle. The man who presided over that meeting was nobody less than Henry Clay, who was the Speaker of that U.S. House of Representatives, the second most powerful politician in America after the president, chaired the meeting. And Monroe, the president, who became president shortly after the meeting, was a paid-up member of the Virginia Auxiliary of the American Colonization Society. So this was not a fringe group. This was mainstream, powerful politicians behind this.
Rahman faced the agony of parting from those he loved most.
The morning of my departure was beautiful, clear, and calm. As we set to go, I told my children of my care for them, and that I would buy them free at 10 prices.
I was told there was a look of silent agony in their eyes. I could not bear witness to this. Andrew Marshall.
And so people succumbed again to malaria, yellow fever, and other diseases that these people had no immunity to. So they suffered immensely. The death rate in early years of Liberian settlement is among the highest in the world. And of course they faced the ongoing hostility with the native peoples there, who, even though they saw these settlers, they said, well, they look like us, but they dress like Westerners. And it's not surprising that the word that the natives gave to the settlers was the black white men, because they were, as far as the natives were, they were white men in their habits, in their attitudes, in their customs, except they were black.
My father was Sori, king of Fouta Djallon. At 26, my father gave me command of 2,000 men and sent me to protect our way to the sea. We defeated our enemies, and I hurried back with a few men to report to my father. We were ambushed. We heard the guns. We saw the smoke. And my men dropped like rain. Fearing my father's revenge, they dragged me and my men to the sea. They bound me, pulled off my shoes, made me go barefoot 100 miles, and led my horse before me. They sold me to slave traders on an English ship for 2 flasks of powder, some muskets, 8 twists of tobacco, and 2 bottles of rum.
Rahman made a harrowing Atlantic crossing, unaware of what lay before him.